Wanted to make a quick video. Was working on the roof rack for the Sprinter van, and an aluminum extrusion fell and did some real bad damage to the fender of the GTO, all the way down to the primer. Actually hit up here and bounced and did a few different spots. Quite a bit of damage. That was terrible. So after I was finished dry heaving, I did some repairs up on this end that aren't complete, but I wanted to video the process. I'm going to use some single stage paint that I had left over. The paint job's base coat, clear coat, but I have some single stage from spraying the interior. So I'm going to build it up and do the best repair that I can and see how it looks. And video it, and you can follow along. Got some single stage and some hardener mixed up here, and we're just going to build up a lot of layers because it's a really deep gouge. Once it's built up far enough, we'll take it down with a razor blade, kind of like a run, and wet sand it with a very, very small sanding block and see what kind of a result you end up with. Cleaned the area really well with alcohol first. There's a lot of sawdust floating around from woodwork right now. So, as clean as we could. The single stage is a really good match. It won't be perfect. It won't stand up to scrutiny under the sunlight, but it will look a lot better than it does, and probably better than trying to repaint and match the whole fender. If we have to, we'll repaint the whole fender. It's one of the difficulties of coexisting in a two-car garage with the car. It's been in here with this paint on it for 11 years, 12 years. Never had a problem, and a freak accident. It's often covered, but a cover wouldn't have stopped this. This is a razor sharp edge of a 2-inch extrusion. The repair on the other side of the fender took 11 coats of paint to get it built up suitably. I'm not a paint and body guy, so there's probably a better way to do this, but I don't know anybody in the area that I want touching my car. So we'll see how good we can get it, and go from there if it's not good enough. Whatever the case, it'll protect the damage and look better than it does now. Ideally, you'd lay all these coats in a day so that you don't have to scuff them in between. Like I said, it takes a lot of paint, a lot of coats, and a lot of patience. Also, being on a vertical surface, we're going to have to put on really thin coats or it's just going to sag. So that's one. We'll keep building it up until we get it to a point where it looks like it's flush. Alright, back for a second coat. Third coat. Coat number 4. Coat number 6, I think. I'm losing count. So eventually, I'm going to have to let these cure. I don't put too many coats down, and I'm not going to be out here every 45 minutes or so to put them on. So once they cure, I'm going to use a fiberglass pen to scuff so that the next coat will adhere well. I've had pretty good luck with that so far, at least appearance wise. I can't speak to longevity, and I've never done a paint repair like this, but we'll get a few more coats down and then we'll start hitting this with a razor blade, knocking off some of the excess. It's building up quite a bit from sagging. You won't be able to see terribly well from the camera. I'll do the best I can to get some better lighting on it when further along, but looking pretty good. Some of the smaller spots, there are some smaller scratches as well. There's one up here, one somewhere else. The match was good enough that I actually couldn't find them after I did the repair. So I don't think any casual observer would ever find them, and I'd have to point them out to most people. But this is the largest repair, which I saved for last, both to video and to give myself some practice in the other areas to hopefully make this one turn out a little bit better. It definitely won't be perfect, but I feel like it'll be better than trying to paint match a whole fender on a 10-year-old paint job. It's had some sun exposure. It'd be great if some people chimed in on this video that had actually had some proper training on how to do a repair like this. This is really just a stopgap and just a way to see if we can make it look better. If this one turns out half as well as any of the other repairs, then it'll, like I said, I don't think it'll be noticeable. But this is by far the largest, and I don't know what kind of thickness I'm dealing with on the clear coat, so when we start wet sanding, I could get them all almost perfect, but I'm afraid if I get through the clear coat, then we have problems. I've not had good luck in the past feathering into existing urethane clear coat, short term or long term, so I don't know. That's, I think, coat number 6, so we'll start again tomorrow. Alright, we got 5 or 6 coats of paint down here. We'll still have more coats on the deeper spots, but now we're going to knock down the touch-up paint we've put on and get it close to level, see what we're working with. Just got a razor blade with some masking tape on either end. It's a trick for taking out runs in a paint job. Kind of just shave off a layer there, and then we'll work on it with a small sanding block later. don't know how well you can see this in the video, but we've got some pretty good build up. Got a couple of spots that are probably going to be low. Sanding with 2000 grit, glued to a block of wood with some 3M90 spray adhesive. It just makes a good, real small sanding block. Obviously, very time consuming. We don't want to take off any clear coat until we have enough paint thickness. So we'll just have to keep working at it. It's pretty hard to tell if you've got low spots until you start blocking it. Probably got enough to work with down toward the bottom. We're going to need a little bit more through here. Really light pressure. Don't want to take off much material, and we don't want to disturb the clear coat around it until we have to. The more you get it knocked down with the razor, less blocking you have to do. Make up a new block. I don't know how well you can see, but we're knocking the high spots down. I've got enough paint down at the bottom and probably enough paint up at the top. We'll knock this down a little bit further, and then we're going to have to fill in. Now, we've got 5 or 6 coats, so I want to let this dry for a few days and scuff it. I don't want to have so many coats that it doesn't cure properly. And I won't be able to buff this. Being this many layers of paint, it'll take quite a while to dry to where I want to buff it. We don't want to get impatient with it, and we don't want to take off too much clear coat. If we get down through the clear coat, we got problems. I don't want to re-clear the whole fender. I don't want to try to blend the clear coat. So we just gotta be patient and not remove too much material. We're almost perfect up top. We're done with 2000 wet sanding. We've got some 5000 Trizac. We can dry sand with that, and that'll really show any surface imperfections we have left. And it'll cut down on our buffing a lot. one tiny little imperfection up top. I also don't want to get greedy. It's not going to be perfect. We want to get it as close as we can without taking off too much material. Luckily, if there's enough clear on here, we ought to be able to sand, wet sand gently with 2000 for quite a while before we have to worry about getting through to the base coat. Would say if the paint job's not old and hadn't been in the sun too much, and you have the exact single stage the car was painted with, you could get a repair that was indiscernible, which is pretty impressive. I've never tried this kind of repair. I probably wouldn't spend this much time on a daily driver, but it's nice to know that it's doable. We've got this knocked down pretty much as far as we need to. We've got a few spots you can see on the camera. We're going to have to add more paint. To do that, I'll scuff it with a fiberglass pen to make sure it's got some adhesion between coats, and since we're not sanding down inside here to give it any tooth. It's looking pretty good. This repair works a lot better on deep scratches and things than it does a half-inch area of missing paint, so nothing's ever going to make this look perfect short of repainting the whole fender, but it'll certainly look better than it did and protect the area until come up with another game plan. You start hitting it with the Trizact, you can see it'll change the sheen of the new paint. And it'll actually put a little fine white powder in any of the low spots. So you can see there's some really light speckling right here. So kind of go back with a smaller item like a toothpick, and you can fill in some of these tiny surface imperfections. And you just keep working it. The key is getting enough paint in there so you don't have to keep knocking it down, because it depends on your paint job, but you may only have a certain number of coats before you, or sanding, before you get through the clear coat clearly. Overall, this looks really good for our first pass. Be back to put another coat on the low spots here, or later this evening, or maybe tomorrow. And let's keep working at it. back to put a little bit more of a coat on. Got a fiberglass pen here. Use it for cleaning electrical contacts, but it works really well to get a little bit of scoring down in these low points so that the paint has something, a little bit of tooth. Put down another coat, probably do 2 or 3 more before we try to block this out again. Got the surface back to pretty close to perfectly level. The color match isn't going to be perfect, especially in the sun, but some of the lower parts of the scratch where it wasn't so deep, you can't even see anymore. We'll give this a couple more days to cure before we try to buff it. With anything more than, this is 5000 Trizac, really fine sanding sponge. But overall, it looks great. Don't want to get greedy and try to take off too much clear coat here, because then we've got a much bigger project on our hands. So overall, I think once we buff this out, it's going to look pretty nice. I'll see if I can't get some better shots. You can see the shiny spot is where the new paint is. And that'll blend in a lot better when it's all shiny. The only difference in discontinuity will be in the color and shade of the single stage versus the base coat clear coat. But again, I think it'll be indiscernible unless I pointed it out to you, which is a substantial improvement from what it looked like when the aluminum fell on it. So there we are. Give this one light run with some 3M polishing compound. Get out some of the fine scratches and give us a little better of an idea what we'll be working with here. The fresh paint's not going to polish up the same as the surrounding paint. We'll have to give it a couple of days to cure. But like I said, it'll give us an idea. I should say a couple more days. It's not fresh. It's been drying already for probably 48 hours, but it's kind of cool out. Of course, I could machine buff all this. When you hit it with a Trizac 5000, it really cuts down on the amount of buffing you have to do, polishing. It's not perfect. I don't know how much you can see. Be more buffing, but overall, it's a pretty good looking repair. Maybe with a little bit more sanding too. There's a couple of really fine scratches, but again, I don't want to get greedy with the clear coat, so we'll just see what it looks like. Pretty much done. I'm not going to take off any more clear coat. Everything looks pretty good. The idea here is not to get a perfect match, although if I had the original paint, I could probably get it pretty close to perfect. It looks a world better than it did when we started, and depending on what you're working on, if you use this process with some touch-up paint for the vehicle, you can really spend as much time as you want, but get it pretty close to perfect. And this is 3M Perfected rubbing compound that I'm using. It's really good stuff. And I've had that bottle for 10 years. It's done an awful lot of repairs and buffing. Move this at a couple angles.